Call this meeting to order. This is a regular meeting of the Northfield Public School Board. Today is Monday, January 13th, 2025, and the time is 6:18 p.m. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded. The recording of this meeting will be posted on the district website as soon as possible. Welcome members of the community here tonight to observe the important work being done on behalf of all school district stakeholders. Dr. Hillman, we have some items in the table file. Will you update us?
Yes, we have several items in the table file this evening. First, we are removing policy 429 from the agenda. This would have been the first reading of this policy to extend emergency sick and safe time. We got some additional information. We continue to learn more about, we're actually still implementing a number of the legislative requirements that were approved by the 2023 legislature. And due to some new information on Friday, we don't believe that this policy will any longer be needed. And so we're going to remove it from the agenda tonight for consideration. If it does need to come back, we'd bring it back at such time that we felt was appropriate. But right now, we believe the current law covers the concern that we had at the time. We also have a number of personnel items. There are several appointments, increase, decrease, change in assignment, retirement. There's a retirement, and then an overnight field trip permission form. That is what we have in the table file this evening.
Very good. Thank you so much. If there are no objections, we will add these items to the agenda as we move forward. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Okay, moved by Jeff, second. And by Amy. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We do not have any public comment tonight, so we'll move on to item 4, which is our announcements and recognitions. Dr. Hillman?
We do have several recognitions this evening. First of all, we want to congratulate 10th grader Allison Carl and 9th grader Molly Albers, who participated in the Veterans of Foreign Wars essay and speech competition on December 11th. Each wrote an essay and speech on the topic, Is America Today Our Forefathers' Vision? Allison's essay earned first place, and Molly's essay earned runner-up in the local competition. Both did a fantastic job and received a financial scholarship. So congratulations to Allison and Molly. We also want to acknowledge Northfield High School teacher, social studies teacher Kevin Dahl, who was awarded the VFW Citizenship Educator Teacher Award by the Northfield VFW on December 11th. Kevin received his award in the news that he was also selected as the VFW's first District Teacher of the Year, which encompasses 28 southeastern Minnesota communities. And Mr. Dahl will now compete at the state competition, which includes over 200 Minnesota communities. And so we want to congratulate Mr. Dahl. We really appreciate him. And I mentioned there was a retirement in the table file, and Mr. Dahl did submit his retirement for the end of this school year. So we thank Kevin for all of his work and the work that he will do between now and June. We also had several students who participated in the Minnesota State Orchestra. So we want to congratulate Audrey Bryan, Lucy Gordon Mercer, Helena Holleran, Max Mazzarello, Amargan Nega, for their acceptance into the 2025 Strings and Orchestra Teachers Association, the Minnesota Middle Level All-State Orchestra. Soren Perkins, Mia Solin were also selected as alternates. And this is open to students in grades 7 through 9. They audition to participate in that ensemble, and they'll perform in conjunction with the Minnesota Music Educators Convention in February in Minneapolis. This is a real significant honor for our middle school 7th through 9th grade musicians. So we want to congratulate all of those strings players on that really auspicious honor. The Minnesota State High School League has something that's called the AAA Award. And so we want to congratulate Anna Forbord and Aki Gupta, who have been selected as the Northfield High School 2024 AAA Award winners. This is for their excellence in academics, arts, and athletics. They need to be high school seniors who have a 3.0 or higher grade point average and who participate in league-sponsored athletics and fine arts activities. And both Anna and Aki will now move into a pool of regional finalists, and if they're selected, they might be able to win the statewide award. We also want to acknowledge the State High School League's Excel Award winners. And Northfield High School is proud to announce that Tara Alanas and Nicholas Livingston are the 2024 Excel Award winners. This award is designed exclusively for juniors who are active in school activities, leaders in their schools, and who demonstrate a strong commitment to community service. And we want to congratulate both Tara and Nicholas. So number of student recognitions, and of course, we don't want to leave the board out this evening. We have several board recognitions this evening. I mentioned this at a previous meeting, but we have the official documentation from the School Boards Association, so I'd like to honor several people for having completed what's called the Leadership Workshop Series. The Leadership Workshop Series means that these board members have completed phase 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we know more board members than who are just being recognized tonight have completed that honor, but these are the people who have been most recently honored. So the three board members who we have who are receiving the Workshop Series Award, or the Leadership Development Program Award, are Jenny Nelson. So Jenny, I have your certificate and your letter here. I'll bring it over to you. Ben Miller has also completed the Leadership Development Program. And now we have a Director's Award. And so the Director's Award is an acknowledgement of a board member who has completed 100 or more hours of attendance at MSBA-sponsored meetings and activities within a 4-year period of time. And I'm pleased to share that our board chair, Claudia Gonzalez-George, has earned this Director's Award from MSBA. So congratulations to Claudia. And then finally, we have 2 awards for Amy Gerwitz. Amy has achieved both the MSBA Leadership Development Program Award, and she has also received that Director's Award for completing 100 or more hours of attendance at MSBA-sponsored meetings and activities in the last 4 years. So congratulations, Amy. And I think it's important for the community to see the board be recognized. I think a lot of people may perceive that it is the work that happens at this table that is what is done, but there's a lot of other work that happens by board members. And being up to date on the latest practices and procedures through training at MSBA is something that should give our community the kind of confidence in our board that you are continuing to develop yourselves as board members. So we want to congratulate all of those who were acknowledged tonight. We had a lot of them in the hopper since it's been a while since we've met, but always good to celebrate the triumphs of the people in our school districts. Those are your announcements and recognitions.
Thank you. Very exciting. Congratulations to all. All right, we're on items for discussion and reports. And we did remove policy 429, item A. So we are on item B. Prairie Creek Community School, as well as Arcadia Charter School, will present their annual reports, and we will have Simon Tyler, Director of Prairie Creek Community School, come up first. Welcome, Simon.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to start out with a thank you. On behalf of Prairie Creek School, appreciation to Dr. Hillman, Charter School Liaison Darryl Keeler, who's here this evening as well, and all of you for your collaborative support for our work out at Prairie Creek. Appreciate this opportunity once a year to come out and visit with you, share a little bit about our program, a few happenings, and take whatever questions you have as well. And I will endeavor to do all of that within a tight 20 minutes or less time frame, as I know you're all very, very busy. What I hope to do tonight, as well as sort of give a bit of an update for some of the newer members of the board, is shine a light on what I think are sort of the key components of what it is to be a public charter school. And by charter school law, we have a strong commitment both to student achievement, to all the accountability, to all the financial governance care that any public school should have. And part of why I come this evening is to, assure you that's happening. But also we have a charter school commitment to innovation. So this evening, in a couple of slides, I'll talk about some of the things that are happening that are more innovative in our program, and perhaps give you a small insight into happenings in a teacher-led school. So our mission, I've been coming to talk to you, I think, since 2008 about our program. I've been working at Prairie Creek. I started as a teacher when we first became a charter school in 2002. That was the start of Prairie Creek's relationship with the Northfield School Board. It's wonderful from my perspective that the Prairie Creek mission has essentially remained unchanged in that time. We serve these 4 pillars. We're a community school, a child-centered school, progressive education school. And as I said, I'll give you a little window on an item that might connect with that component of the mission. And we aim to make the world a better place. We've certainly revisited our mission many times. We've revised it. I think we've improved it. We've been attentive to it. But those 4 principles remain unchanged for us. I want to talk about one of those innovative programs right now. One of the highlights in 2024 for us was some recognition the school got for a program we developed probably 2 or 3 years now, which was really a teacher initiative at our school. We developed something called the All School Book Club. We have a teacher-led professional development model at Prairie Creek. And in those meetings, we were looking for ways to bring together a cohesive literacy program built out of a model where if teachers are selecting a book that the whole school will read together, it will be an opportunity not just to enhance the literacy of a program, but to deepen practices around multi-age, children supporting children, to bring in an equity lens to some conversations, and also connect these books back to our professional development with our own study. So over the course of a couple of years, we produced this program, we refined it. We've now shared it out at 2 national conferences, and the All School Book Club was honored with the Minnesota Association of Charter Schools Innovation Award in 2024. There's a picture of 3 of our teachers who have been instrumental in developing this program with the award in the slide. In the picture below, you see the children gathered in what we call an all-school gathering, which is a once-a-week community event where at different points through the year, we're highlighting the all-school book. There's readings, activities in a multi-age construct to center on that title. But enough of me talking about, well, not quite enough of me talking about the program, because I do have a 5-minute video, if you'll permit me to share it, which was part of the award. And I think that'll let you hear the children's voice. Unfortunately, my voice a little more as well. I apologize in advance for that. And importantly, the teacher's voice on what this is about. So if Tim, you could bring that up, I'll just take 5 minutes of your time with this. The Old School Book Club was initiated by one of our teachers, Ryan. We were in conversation in professional development around how to build community with children around printed text. So really it started with a conversation between the faculty in one of our professional development sessions and really grew from there.
Well, for a long time, the school has had our multi-age bird buddy community groups where kids from across multiple grade levels will meet together to do projects, community building activities. We were looking for ways to embed more academic work or embed more work around diversity and equity and justice and community topics. And we thought that the Bird Buddies program could be a venue for that sort of activity.
So what we do first is we read it to just our class. We have a conversation then. Then we move on to reading it as a whole school together in the gym. And then we move on to reading it in our Bird Buddy classes with those multi-age groups. There's a lot of wonderful picture books out there that people might not be using to their full potential. And so we thought of a bunch of different books. We really looked closely at them. We decided on things that we could do to strengthen the kids' vocabulary, the common vocabulary across kindergarten all the way up to 5th grade, and building those relationships in our Bird Buddies, and just kind of seeing the world in a different way, going back to our mission of making the world a better place.
Taking a look at like what's relevant in like what culturally and worldwide is relevant right now, and also what's relevant in the school too. So making sure that kids have kind of that personal connection, but then also seeing outside of themselves and seeing out into the greater world and introducing maybe some things that they hadn't really thought about.
Well, we usually do something related to something in the book. Like for Worm and Caterpillar, our friends, we did something to see our differences, and we use different beads, all the ways to be smart. We did something for that too. We wrote all the things we were good at and saw how different we were, which was fun.
We get to read some great books, super fun. They choose like the best books. And we have like some really good activities, like we have to figure out, and we like make friends with, and we figure out a lot of stuff about like our family. We made like cards, and we'd write people we love on them. There's a lot of just like activities and great books.
I learned that everybody has like different similarities and like different things in common.
I think like, especially when you have like activities that like everybody's doing something a little bit different, it's really cool to see how they're different and how they're a little same. I think like a lot of the themes inside of the book is like being accepting of people and being kind to them no matter what.
I thought in the Worm and the Caterpillar book, the fact that there was a little hidden story inside of it where the caterpillar was scared that the worm would not like how it changed, but it was the fact that the worm didn't care because it was still him inside.
Mine was probably the one for a family like ours, because we would get these envelopes and like the seal would be like a heart, it was kind of like heart shaped, and we'd like draw on it and like write a letter to our family.
We didn't create it as an accountability measure at all, but it does help us make sure that like, yeah, are we addressing certain topics in all of our classrooms? And are we addressing certain topics in a multi-age, multifaceted way?
So rather than having shared reading around just a book in the classroom, even though that practice wasn't going to end at each developmental level, we were just really curious about this notion of what if the whole school read a book together? Adults, children, around a chosen text, and what energy would that bring? And what opportunities would that engender for us to think about who we were as a whole school community? Yeah. So now we're thinking about how do we deepen this practice. We keep finding new ways to look at books, look at topics that connect with our mission in different places. Our next book, I think, will be Sometimes I Feel Like an Oak by Danielle Daniel, which is a series of 12 lyrical poems about trees. So that'll very much connect to the forest classroom part of our mission, which we haven't really featured in the book club yet. So it's sort of this exciting, growing space. I'll be happy to answer questions about it when I'm done with my presentation, if you have any follow-up wonders. Just moving on to some of more sort of accountability centered parts of my annual report to you. Each year I bring reassurance also by the measure of student achievement. We're a successful public school. This simple chart just shows you Prairie Creek, Minnesota comprehensive assessment scores in comparison to state scores in science, math, and reading over the course of the current contract we have with you. And for sure, you see some variation on our proficiency scores from years to years, sometimes going up, going down. I'm always at pains to point out that we're a small school and it's a small cell size of students being tested, so we tend to get a little more variation than the state statistics, but you can see we're consistently performing above state averages. The bulleted list down the left really sort of emphasizes that innovative piece again, though, that we as a public progressive education school always want to keep central to our evaluation process. We have conferences coming up next week. All parents participate in conferences, all children do. And the top bullet there, the child-centered narratives, those are typically sort of 2-page written reflections on the whole child by the teacher that gets shared out with families. So alongside formative assessments, FastBridge, state assessments, performance observations, and various more progressive education pieces, we're really trying to build out an evaluation of the whole child. And so it all matters. the snapshot data of the MCAs on the right as gives us wonders and questions to know the child deeply. We're looking at a multifaceted approach to knowing them. Fiscal management, also a big part of what I come to you with each year to let the authorized know that we're attentive to the fiscal sustainability of our school. We have a robust finance committee that meets before our board meetings and reports out each month. And we have a lot of conversation around forward planning. We have an outstanding CFO, Keith Johnson, who's always brought the lens of we need to be looking 3 to 5 years out in our fiscal planning, especially as a small school. We're more vulnerable to fiscal changes. The winds of change that happen in the world of public school finance very quickly can impact a smaller program more rapidly than a large district. So we do maintain a really strong fund balance. And you can see there, it has declined slightly since 2021, but we're still, by any charter school measure, in a very strong place with our fund balance. But we're also having conversations around what does the trajectory look like. I think probably our financial wonders are not dissimilar to yours. It's difficult to keep up with the expense of running a public school, with the revenues we're receiving. And we're taking a close look at that. You know, what does our fund balance trajectory look like over 3 to 5 years? What programmatic adjustments do we need to be thinking about or lobbying for, perhaps, in anticipation of that? And finally, I want to talk to you a little bit about future plans. One of the more enjoyable parts of this presentation to you is sort of focusing my thinking on what's coming up in the next few years. We've got some really exciting things that are happening this year. We're currently in an arts residency with musician Ross Sutter, who brings folk music, dance, musicianship, instrumental insights for children from Northern European cultures. We've really invested in our community connections calendar this year. We know how important this is to our mission. We've got a month-by-month opportunity for families to engage with each other informally. You can see in the picture, we've got a photograph of our hoop house that was built in collaboration with St. Olaf Environmental Studies students a couple of years ago. We're now writing grants to extend that out into a community garden, and we will be working again in the second half of the year with St. Olaf students on building out a more comprehensive strategic plan for that part of our grounds. A couple of things you'll be familiar with, READ Act implementation. We're about a third of the way through our staff training on READ Act. We're working through the University of Minnesota program. That's going to carry on through the rest of the year and into next fall. But we will have all our teachers and staff who work with children in the area of literacy fully trained by READ Act requirements by next November. And alongside that, we've also set time aside later this year to take a deep dive into our literacy curriculum and the curriculums that are being supported through the READ Act. Just a sort of careful look to see, we'll be looking to see what is best for our model. And then finally, sustainability planning. We're currently in, I think next year is the last year of our current contract with the Northfield School District that ends in the spring of 2026. I think that sort of positions us sort of a year or so out from that to really start thinking about where we are, not just in the relationship with you, our authorized, that we deeply appreciate, but in a new contractual cycle, what's the focus for fiscal sustainability? What are the mission pieces we want to attend to? How do we want to continue to sort of push and innovate and look at the faculty and the leaders within the program who are going to be sort of driving that mission forward, hopefully for another 5 years with this district, should you decide to move forward with us again next year. And with that, I think I just about slid under the 20-minute window with a video thrown in. So perhaps a few minutes for any questions or wonders you have about our presentation.
Thank you so much, Simon. That was an impressive report and fantastic implementation of the book club. Very, very cool.
Okay.
Board members, do you have any questions or comments at this time for Simon? Okay, Amy?
Welcome, Simon. You know,
Thank-
I'm a strong supporter of Prairie Creek School. And I just, first of all, congratulations on receiving awards for the All-School Book Club. And one of my questions is, how many books do you read a year as part of the book club?
Yeah, that was part of the process. Initially, we really didn't know how involved it would be spending time with each book. What we've settled on is 3 books a year. So we still got a fall, winter, spring model. What struck us when we got deep into it and is just how involved the work was of working through a book with a whole school. Because what we do is on our Wednesday professional development sessions, we have a committee that's taking planning time, doing the research, bringing recommendations to the rest of the faculty. But then we're studying the book too before we come to the children. And then we're doing the work of, well, how will this actually manifest itself in the classroom spaces and the all-school gathering? So there's a whole cycle there, and to do the book justice, we really think 3 is about as many as we can do. I mean, in my office, I think I've got sort of 9 of these books on a shelf now. One of the beautiful things is that they sort of cycle around for the children. The children recognize them. So it's a little bit less is more emphasis in this part of our literacy program, I think. And there's often things connected to the book, arts activities for Lubna and Pebble. We did a big, as a refugee focused, at the time there were a lot of Afghanistan refugees coming into Minnesota. So we did a whole process of writing letters, service learning around that. So we sort of want to create space for the projects to emerge around the book. So we read 1 book in the fall, Pepe and the Parade, which is a focus on Hispanic culture and celebration of that. This will have the Oak Trees book coming up in next month, and then after spring break, we'll be looking to fit 1 more in. So it's a fun process.
Thank you. It's fun to hear all of the things that you include. It's not just reading the book, it's
Absolutely.
much more.
Yeah, we're always looking to integrate the arts service projects and often, sometimes engineering. I think in the video is a little snapshot of the Two Towers book where the children were engaged in a science activity. It was an engineering project connected to the book. So we're seeking out cross-curricular interdisciplinary themes launched from the text.
That sort of segues perfectly into my second and last questions for now. I know you were talking about you have a small group for your test results, but it can't help but notice, a 19-point difference in your science score between 2023 and 2024. Is that truly just a cohort issue, do you think? Or is there something more that was missing in science this year? Or what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts go back to what I said when the slide was up there, is that I don't think we should be dismissive of snapshot assessments. I think we should question what they're telling us, but they too tell us something. I think the science is particularly interesting because it's the smallest cohort. What you see there in that percentage is less than 30 students, because it's only 5th graders who take the science MCA, whereas there's 90 students in the English and math assessment. So in science particularly, you can see much wider swings rather, when the percentage of one student is, above 3% of that score. So if there are a number of students in a particular grade who are getting supported services and still taking that assessment, that might impact the score. It doesn't necessarily mean that child hasn't progressed in the area of science, but they might not meet proficiency by the MCA. So a little of that awareness certainly plays into that. And then you're looking for trend data. I mean, that data goes back 5 years. Certainly we'll be looking at our science scores this year and going forward. And the science MCA is a particularly interesting one because there's a shift in the design of the MCA this year. It's going to the 5th grade science anyway. I'm not sure about the other science MCAs, is going to have more of an open written component, which we're really interested in, because our students write a lot about science. It does get integrated into the interdisciplinary project model. So I think, yeah, will we be looking at how those scores come out this year? Certainly. Do I think there's a little bit of a function of small cell size there? Yes, also. But we have a 2-year tracker model that we use for hitting the science standards within our themes. And not much has changed in that regard. But sure, yeah, a score like that makes you ask appropriate questions.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Amen. Okay, Corey, you had a question?
Hi, Simon. Always a joy to have you here to present to us. You touched on at the end there that we're 1 year away from our contract being
Yeah.
hopefully renewed, right, at that point. And it's been a successful, long-standing relationship, and I think most people in this room understand it's a unique relationship with the school district being the authorizer of both you and Arcadia. We've seen more stories about challenges with charter schools from an accountability perspective, academic perspective. How are some ways that your community is modeling for other districts, other charter schools, other people in education to show the success stories you're having, both from a PR facet, but
Yeah.
certainly the administrative side where your financials are in place, your academics are in place, and the relationship you have with your authorizer, excuse me, is in a good state. What are some ways you've maybe shared those and modeled that over the years?
Yeah, that's a really terrific question, Corey. I'm aware that there's been some media articles around charter schools first. Well, I think first, to be transparent, I think the charter school movement, in essence, sort of creates this very sort of challenging space to be both a public school and do all the accountability things on a small model, and to be innovative at the same time. You really have to enthusiastically embrace those two tracks. So from my perspective as director, I've always tried to do just that, and that's why you see the balance in these presentations between what it is to be accountable and to be transparent. There's a whole accountability tab on our website that has all the information anyone in the public can find and know about, and that's central. Without that stability, the innovation can't happen. But then also push back into the point of charter schools, which was to create this sort of vibrant, innovative space and tell those stories. And I think there's multiple ways of doing that. This is one of them. We work very hard within our own community to tell our parents, inform our parents about the why behind what we're doing with a process of parent education, inviting parents into spaces. I think we also have to connect with others. We're part of the Minnesota School Association. We take opportunities to share our practice with others, share our philosophy with others, and invite that in. So we do a lot of school visits from other places. We're constantly getting other teacher-led schools, other experiential programs who know about us because we've been around for a long time now and want to visit and want to learn. And we sort of lean into that. We go to a national conference of progressive education schools once every 2 years. And we always try and present, showcase, share what we're doing in that space as well. At the last conference, we did share out about the All School Book Club and promoted it as a model that other small schools could do. So I do think there's multiple ways. And then from my perspective, one thing I talk about is having a collaborative, not an antagonistic relationship with your local traditional districts is central. I mean, I truly believe this is why Prairie Creek and Arcadia have been successful, is that we're supported by the district, we've been supported by Dr. Hillman and superintendents before him and the board as a partnership. It's seen as a win-win. We're a small, very small component of the Northfield educational landscape, but I think we spark questions and ideas and opportunities that make us an important part of that landscape. And when I'm in conversation with anyone about who we are and what we do, I talk about that relationship a lot. I wish other charter schools had collaborative setups with the traditional district as authorizer. I think we'd have a very different charter school landscape right now. I really do. To be able to call on Dr. Hillman or to check in with Daryl when we have sort of accountability pieces in mind helps us focus on our innovative work. I also tell the story of, I think we're sort of like an invitational space into this community. Certainly, The majority of our students are Northfield residents, but we attract a lot of students as a sort of a boundaryless charter school district from neighboring districts. We have folks who seek us out. Often they come to Prairie Creek and they become really inspired about what it is to be part of the Northfield landscape too. So I tell that story. Sitting here and listening to announcements at the beginning of a board meeting, I hear names of students who went to Prairie Creek, and often I hear names of students who weren't originally from Northfield shared out, who came to Prairie Creek and then went into the district. So I think it's telling that story of this can be not a polarizing space, but a collaborative space is what interests me and what we try to do. Yep.
Simon. And then Ben, you had a question?
Yeah, thank you, Simon.
Yeah.
Good to see you as always.
Yeah.
Congrats on the award. I would emphasize one of those points you made just in terms of, I think what makes Prairie Creek and Arcadia unique is that relationship with the authorizer. I think
Yeah.
there's only one additional charter school kind of standard district relationship anymore.
Mhm.
And I think that's, I can't say it any better than you did. So, but I think that really does stand out to me, and both unique and special. So
Yeah.
I appreciate the work of this board, and obviously
Yes.
yours as well, and
Yeah.
maintaining that.
Yeah.
Just a quick question, I think talking about accountability
Yeah.
and opportunity, there've been a number of legislative changes perhaps you've noticed
Mhm.
the last
Yeah.
couple of years.
Yeah, one or two.
One or two.
Yeah.
What, from your perspective, have those created challenges or
Mhm.
opportunities or both? Just kind of what stands out specifically through the Prairie Creek lens for you?
Yeah, I think I think most of them come with good intent. Can I say that? I think unfunded mandates are difficult. So it's separating off the intent from how we have to put it into practice. A good example would be free school lunch. One wonderful initiative to provide free meals for students. In our small program, perhaps this has played out in other spaces as well. The increase in meals that we're serving, there wasn't necessarily, I don't think, appropriate thought into the budgetary cost of managing that instance of staffing, space, and what it would cost to deliver that. So I think those are often the challenges that you'll hear from other school officials as well. For sure, let's look at initiatives that support students. Let's do the work alongside that to think through what it's going to cost, how it's going to be staffed in an already pretty burdened environment. So I would say that would be the theme, Ben, in response. And as you have any number of ones, you could pick your favorite, but I would say that's the trend I'm interested in as a school leader, is how can we get the educator's voice into some more of these legislative decisions. But I also see promising changes too. I think the world's best workforce is a good example of where I see a shift in some of the goal spaces. There's a new goal in there this year around lifelong learning. That's a huge celebratory thing for us from a mission perspective, and that's a shift that happens over time. So I think as long as there's a dialogue back and forth between legislators and educators, we can also tweak things back into a more manageable direction as well.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you, Simon.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate your time.
Next, we have Laura Stelter, Director of Arcadia Charter School, presenting. These reviews and written reports fulfill state requirements for our district and for the state, as I said, for annual reporting to our school board. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you. All right. We have one blank slide, so I'm going to add, I showed this to my 8th graders because I try to model for them like authentic writing tasks and things like that. And they said, well, our one criticism is there's no slide about how awesome we are. So I'm going to use this blank slide to tell you my 8th grade English class is really awesome, and they were fantastic at giving me feedback on my presentation. So this is reporting on last year. I always like to start by talking about Arcadia's mission, which is to prepare our students to transition intellectually, emotionally, and ethically to future employment, higher education, and engaged citizenship. So when we were thinking about how are we going to make sure that we are really getting to that mission, we created something called the Arcadia Rubric. This was a project that was a combination of the board and community, the general Arcadia community, to put this together. last year I had the equitable and inclusive, a little snip of that. This year I put a little snip of the project-based learning so that you can see sort of what that rubric looks like. Our 4 categories that we identified were progressive, equitable and inclusive, growth and transition focused, and project-based learning. That progressive piece is really coming through in that engaged citizenship. It's sort of the Dewey tradition of progressive education, really preparing students to participate in democracy. Equitable and inclusive, you really see that in how we are working with our special education students. We have a much higher special education population than a traditional district typically has. We have around 40% of our students. And then also with language, we really work to ensure that students are able to use all of their linguistic resources at Arcadia. And so if a student is multilingual, we want them to use all of those languages in our curriculum, in their academic studies, so that they're really developing all of their linguistic skills. Growth and transition certainly is sort of the basis of our mission statement. We are preparing them to transition to these places. So you can see that in a lot of our programming, especially things like the senior project, where they're having to really go through this process of preparing for what's next in adulthood. And then, of course, in project-based learning, which is also what our charter is based on. So the contract that we have with you says that we are going to really do project-based learning well. Our current focus is still on that equitable and inclusive piece and on the project-based learning piece. We are continuing to do, and last year we did quite a bit of professional development around project-based learning. PBL 101 is now a required training for all Arcadia teachers. And in addition to that, along with that equitable and inclusive piece, we have professional development around restorative practices continuing. We've been doing that for about 4 years now, really consistently. And then you'll see in our scores, we are really emphasizing mathematics and really working on building our math program. What all of this has meant, our work toward our mission, we had 0 disciplinary referrals last year, which it was really awesome. And if you look at some of the work that we do, like at the beginning of the year with our opening expedition, 4 days of civics content, where the students themselves are building a contract, a social contract, that they hold each other accountable to and that they feel really connected to. I think that's a big piece of that as well. So it's awesome to fill out the DERS report and just say, nothing to report. It was pretty cool. Actually, I've gotten to do that for a few years now, so feels good. The reading and science scores are especially solid. We have a really, I think a lot of the work that they do in that opening expedition and in their classes across the board really build literacy skills. Our science scores, if you look at our science curriculum, it's very project-based, and I think there's a lot of hands-on pieces there that really help build their science understanding. And now we have projects in every class. So it's truly across the curriculum. Just looking at MCA data, our participation in 2021 was only in the 40%. That was the COVID year. And it has come back very strongly. We're back into the 90%. 100% of our students participated in the science MCA. One of the challenges with the math MCA data, so for example, in 2024, 54 students actually tested. We had more students than that who were eligible to test. A number who opted not to probably would have passed it, but they don't count as passing it if they don't take the test. And so our math scores have continually been something that we've really been striving to improve. And at the same time, if one of those students had taken it and passed, the score would have been at the state average. So it's like Simon mentioned, when you're looking at that really small cell size, it can vary quite a bit from year to year based on the number that take the test. For example, in 2022, 69 students tested. So you can kind of see those, it's hard to gauge like how much impact one student will have. They would have had less impact in 2022, which was a year that really helped us bring into focus that math goal, that 2 years in a row, we hadn't really moved the needle on our math scores. All of that led to some pretty deep soul searching around math and what are we going to do as a school to really improve that math curriculum. And math experience for students, make sure that they were getting really cohesive mathematics instruction. And so while it took a few years to really make that shift, this year we are actually using the illustrative or illustrative, depending on who you ask, math curriculum across our 612. Oh, I take that back. Algebra 2 is still the teacher's curriculum because she wanted a year to implement in the other classes before she had to implement in all of her classes. So 6th through 8th and 9th grade are all using the illustrative mathematics curriculum. And then Algebra 2 and intermediate algebra are all illustrative math. And then Algebra 2 is currently still the teacher created, but that will then shift to the illustrative math curriculum as well. I wanted to add some additional measures of student achievement because I think there are some really cool things happening that go beyond just the MCA scores. We do have a 100% graduation rate if you look at our 5 years. So we had one student who didn't graduate with the rest of the class, but they have now graduated. So they finished that last little piece that they needed. We had 8 students participating in PSEO, which was almost half of our senior class, which is a little tricky in terms of funding, but we're really proud of them for the work that they do, taking a number of college classes. We actually have students who take full-time PSEO or just a couple of classes. 100% of our seniors complete a senior project. That's part of that transition piece. Bilingual SEAL testing. So we offer that every year. We have had 6 students so far who have received certificates or SEALs since 2020. That allows them to actually get academic credit through the MINSCU system. So if they were to apply to college and they have received a certificate or a SEAL, that just indicates different levels of proficiency, basically, and they get different amounts of credit. So they could essentially receive credit for like Spanish 101 and move on to Spanish 102. Or they could, hire depending on the SEAL. Our average ACT score, this is a really fun one. So last year it was 25.7. This year it's 20, or in 2024 it was 26. So we're just going up in our average ACT score, which is way above the national average of 19.4. And as I mentioned, we had 0 significant disciplinary referrals, which is really cool. And I love how the community has really come together around just the environment and how they want it to feel. And they are really determining what they want it to be. Our average daily membership trend has fluctuated quite a bit in the last few years. So following the COVID years, people were looking for a smaller environment, fewer people. All of a sudden, we still had a number of people taking PSEO classes. Our policy is that we can enroll over 126 students if there are students who are not really there because of PSEO. So we had enrolled like 131 at one point. And even with that, our ADM was 124.51. So that was FY22. Normally, our enrollment hovers between 110 and 120. And our ADM tends to be between 108 and 112. 2 years ago, it was 113. And then last year, we had this really significant drop. Our 6th grade class was very small. So we only had 8 students in the 6th grade, which for a small school makes a really big difference. So had we started with a full 6th grade, we would have been at our normal enrollment. But without that, we started the year at just like 98, 99, 100 students. And then mid-year, we got a number of students who ended up filling it up. And so our ADM ended up at 103.31, but our enrollment did end at 112 at the end of the year. And then this year, our enrollment's actually at 118. So our ADM is looking to be around 113 again. Financially, we really worked hard last year to look at financial stability and sustainability. There were some really hard conversations last year around what we would need to do to really keep Arcadia going well into the future, especially with the additional scrutiny that charter schools have received around their financial processes and stability. We thought it was really, really important to be looking ahead and planning ahead and thinking toward 5 years out, 10 years out, what is this going to look like? In the end, that meant some really significant cuts. So at this point, we have 7.8 FTE general education staff. We cut 2.0 FTE teaching staff last year, and for a small staff, that felt like a lot. However, it did give us the opportunity to make some rather substantial and positive changes to the academics. So the way that Arcadia evolved, we started out with the fully project-based model coming out of the EdVisions tradition. And very quickly, most EdVision schools recognized that all projects all the time, kind of coming out of nowhere with no classes, no foundational knowledge, really doesn't work out very well. And so coming out of that model, they started with seminars, and they had moved to sort of an every other day class model to ensure there was more independent project work time. That was an area that I felt we could make an improvement in our model. I felt that more instructional time for students, especially in English language arts and social studies, was really critical. Math was already an everyday class, but I wanted more everyday instruction in those other courses. So in the end, we were able to make those classes every day instead of every other day. And the math model changed from being to a middle school and a high school math teacher to a math team, where now we have a number of math, general education and special educators working together, meeting regularly to look at data and make determinations about how things are going in math. We're also doing more regular data collection, and we're using more tools. So we have the MCA scores will be interesting, but that's not really the main focus since it lags. We won't know until next August where everybody ended up. But with map testing, we were just doing fall and spring. We're now doing a fall, winter, spring, just to gather more information. And then implementing curriculum-based measures. That's an area of growth for teachers to understand like how to do that well. So, and yet, with all of the financial concern that we had, we actually did end the year positive last year. We knew that we were going to be close. We were conservative in our spending. We had some luck with the weather. The utilities costs and snow removal costs were lower than anticipated, things like that. And then we also got a bit more funding than when we were anticipating. So we ended up actually adding $50,000 to the fund balance, which would have been a $150,000 deficit this year. So we do not have it. We actually are projecting $23,000 in the black this year instead, and next year $79,000 in the black. And so our 5-year projection looks really good, and we have plans to continue maintaining our fund balance at a high level so that when we do have those years where you have a tiny little 6th grade class for some reason or whatever it is, we are prepared to deal with those swings as a small school. The other commentary from the 8th graders was, wait, isn't that last year's picture? And I said, yes, because it's a report about last year. So they had fun picking out all the people that they knew. So any questions for me?
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
Real testament to your leadership. That was great to see the results.
Thank you.
Board members, do you have any comments at this time or question? Okay, Amy?
Laura, thanks for the presentation. I love the fact that you have awesome 8th graders. And I am wondering, since they got to hear your presentation, and it may be too early to answer this, but maybe you've got some reaction from them, but they got to sort of the backstage view of what goes on in education.
Mhm.
And do you think from their reactions that your talk will inspire any change in them or motivate them in any way?
I really hope so. One of the things that I've done, so I've been participating like in the Max Day at the Capitol and things like that. And every year I ask them, do they have any letters they want to send with me? Do they want to just come with me? You know, we can bring a couple of students with. And I think so I actually did also have them read the narrative that you all got. And they had some really good questions about, they were part of the budget discussion last year as seventh graders. And so they were able to then see sort of what I was reporting on that they saw in action last year and that they were part of last year. So a lot of their feedback was just, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. You know, like, because they've already had some introduction to the behind the scenes and they've already been thinking about it. Like Simon mentioned, the universal free lunch. We've had a lot of conversations about that. And so I think they've been more engaged in some of those things that come up because I try to give them these opportunities to give us feedback and see things, sort of that backstage look into what we're doing, into the production. So, yeah.
Well, if they ask you how it went, tell them that you did an awesome job.
Thank you. I will let them know.
Thank you.
Okay, Corey.
Hey, Laura, good to see you.
Good to see.
We all know that transition to sixth grade is challenging for most students for a variety of reasons. Given that your building serves students from 6th to 12th grade, I'm sure that's extra intimidating for some sixth graders. Are there ways that your school helps welcome those students to make them feel part of the community? Do older students, mentor or spend time with them to make them feel, included?
Yeah, so we started actually this past summer with an ice cream social earlier on that was really targeted toward new students in the middle school. So that because we had a picnic that everybody was invited to, and some of the feedback we got was, well, it's really intimidating because there are all these much bigger students there. And so we did one that sort of eased them in, and then they also came to the picnic, and we helped help connect them that way. But I would say that the biggest way that we really promote that is we have some days throughout the year that are mixed grade level groups. And those mixed grade level groups are established during the opening expedition, that civics focused conversation. The high school students attend a leadership training where they are actually running the whole social contract process. And so they are tasked with thinking about how am I going to bring my sixth grader people in my group into this community in a way that feels really good. And so before they run those groups, they've already thoughtfully communicated around, okay, what kind of activities would we want to do that are low stakes, but would help them feel included? How are we going to make sure that they get to speak when we're discussing our social norms? Because we want to make sure that every voice gets to be a part of that. We do sort of 3 different, so they're in their advisories for part of it. So they're making connections. Those are mixed grade level groups. So advisories are 6th, 7th, 8th grade, and then 9th through 12th grade. So they already have some older connections there. We also do some grade level group work during that opening expedition. And then they have the 6-12 mixed grade level group. So they get to make connections in lots of different ways during those days. And then we bring those groups back a couple of times throughout the year so that they see those people again. But because it's a small school, they often run into each other in the hallway and they are able to connect sometimes around projects. If we have a student who did a similar project, we might have them mentor the younger student. Actually, Logan over here, who is an Arcadia graduate, we were just talking about having him come back and mentor. So we find ways to try and connect them, usually through the project process, but also especially in that opening of school so that they're making those connections early on.
And I imagine it's a growth opportunity for the older students to learn how to deal with younger students.
Yes, and we try to be really intentional. Absolutely. Yeah, we don't want to just dump them in and say, good luck. So, yeah.
Excellent. Anyone else comment or question? Okay, Ben.
Thanks, Laura, as always, and congrats on the fun balance. And I know, yeah, hard decisions, but that's encouraging to see. And obviously, like you said, it gives you that flexibility when there's some unpredictability. So, just a question in terms of, like seniors and their projects, like what are some examples of what those look like?
Ooh, it's a wide range. Okay, so if you come to Arcadia to visit, the sign that is in front of the building was actually a senior project. The student wanted to learn how to do large metal sculptures. And so he studied welding. And it took him a little more than the year that they actually have to complete the senior project, but he did complete it. So that the tree sculpture and the sign are metal, and he built that sculpture. He actually welded the tree sculpture, and it's gorgeous. I mean, it's really impressive, especially for a student who had only spent 1 year welding. So it took lots of practice to get to that point. So some of the projects tend to be like really hands-on. We have a table that's in the blue cave space that was a student wanted to learn about woodworking. He worked with a mentor at the Cannon Valley Makers, so there was also sort of a community connection there. And he built the table over the course of this year. It's got an epoxy river. So he had to learn how to do epoxy, and he had to learn how to, make the wood, join the wood and do all these different pieces. So some of them are really hands-on. Some of them are very academic. So we've had students who have worked with Carleton, for example. So we had a student who did a project. So she had started as a middle school student, really interested in ecology and those sorts of projects. Her senior project was the impact of mycorrhiza on prairie plant root systems. She had a little square of the Carleton greenhouse that she set up her experiments in, and had a Carleton professor mentoring that project. We have students do projects that kind of run the gamut based on their interests, based on things that they've developed over time. We have students who run experiments, students who just do a really deep dive into a topic. So if they're, we had one student who did a classics project, was really interested in mythology and also how it has played out in literature over time. And now she's a classics major. So I think, they really widely vary, but they are often linked to student interest. Well, they have to be because it's a lot of work. If you're not interested in it, you probably wouldn't stick with it. So, yeah.
Anyone else, comment or question? Okay, thank you, Laura.
Thank you. And thank you all for putting up with me for the last few months as I've followed around Dr. Hillman. So I appreciate all of you.
Okay, next up is item C, construction update number 3. Dr. Hillman will provide an update on the Northfield High School construction project.
Yes, so in your packet, you have the activities related to the Reimagine Northfield High School bond referendum projects over the last couple of months here. Key aspects are the core planning teams have met. So the core planning team met on December 17th and January 8th. And then that team, along with the activities subcommittee, which is not scheduled to formally meet until later in February, they are doing school tours next week, and board members have been invited to join one or both of those tours should you decide to. So I have listed the itinerary on January 21st. The core planning team, there'll be 2 different tours. One will be more in the metro area. One will be up north to see Rock Ridge High School and Mora High School. So 2 tours that day. And then on January 22nd, a tour of 4 different schools with a focus on their athletic facilities. So those are the core planning team and the facility tours. I've also included for you the latest partnership agreements. So there's a letter from Old Architects and Engineers just referencing the contract that we signed with them back in 2018 and just applying those rates to the current project. And then construction management work is just slightly different. So you see the agreement with Knutson Construction for this particular set of products as the construction management firm. That does not mean they're building it, right? What it means is that they will help us manage the construction processes, and the bidding process, of course, will begin likely early next year. We also held a kickoff meeting with the heads of the Northfield, the city of Northfield departments. This is an effort to make sure we have alignment between the architects, the engineers, the school district, and the city of Northfield to ensure a smooth project related to all of the permits and kinds of things that you need to do with collaboration with the city. And then I just want to highlight a couple of additional community input items. Today was the first high school student input item during the flex period. Another one of those is scheduled, as well as some scheduled input sessions with middle school students. We also have a community feedback session for our Spanish-speaking friends and neighbors. That's coming up on January 22nd. And we have flipped the website, so northfieldschools.org/reimagine is now the site that you'll be able to go to get updates on the construction process. We've archived the referendum site so that people can look at it and compare what we're doing to what we said we were going to do. That's northfieldschools.org/reimagine bond. And we'll be able to link that from the main site. So those are the construction updates for this evening. Be happy to stand for any questions.
Okay, thank you so much. Board members, any questions for Dr. Hillman at this time? I have one easy question. regarding the feedback that's being collected, I know I was a part of a community event where I gave feedback, but prior to that, they had met with teachers. They're now going to meet with students. Is there going to be some way of looking at all of that feedback, or how are they sorting through that, and how do we find out what others have said about the project?
That's a great question. So all of the feedback that Claudia mentioned that came from the community input events, these were where community members or teachers and our staff members from the high school in a different feedback session could put a Post-it note with things that they were interested in seeing in the building. This was around 5 or 6 different topics. The core planning group actually in just their last meeting processed 19 pages worth of feedback. It was the architectural firm put it into thematic pieces, and then there were, I think, 6 or 7 groups that processed through every single one of those. And so we have, Amy is part of the core planning group, so is Jeff. Maggie is also part of the core planning group, so they could certainly speak to any of the way that that was processed. And then the feedback from these next groups will also be brought back and included as part of that process.
Anyone else? All right, then we will move on to item 6, which is the consent agenda. As a reminder, there was some personnel items in the table file added to the consent grouping. Is there anything anyone would like to pull from the consent grouping for separate consideration? Is there a motion to approve the consent grouping? Okay, moved by Ben, second?
Second.
By Corey. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, motion passes. Our next item is item 7, items for individual action. We have one routine item. Be sure that your mic is on and that you're voting, that you're voicing your vote so Kelly can record. Item 7, letter A, the policy committee's recommendations. I'll take a motion and then we can discuss before we vote. Is there a motion to approve the policy committee's recommended updates to policy 103, 401, 402, 403, 404, and 405?
So moved.
Moved by Corey, second? Thank you, Jenny. Okay, is there any discussion on these policies at this time? Any questions, any discussion? None? Okay, then we will move on to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next is items for information, and first up, we have an enrollment report. Dr. Hillman will review the January 2025 enrollment report.
So on the screen here, you see the enrollment report that we have for January of 2025. And you'll see that we have increased for full-time only students as when we compare to December. Still slightly behind our projection, but when we look at the ADMs, we're very close to what Val had projected for ADMs. And then in addition, I've committed to making sure that we show you what the elementary class sizes are each month. As you can see, not a tremendous amount of change from last month to this month, but wanting to make sure that you see that we're running right about the same as we have been the entire school year. So again, that's the enrollment report, and as part of Val's financial projection at our next meeting, we'll do more about what is the projected enrollment as we move ahead. Happy to take any questions on that at this time.
Okay. Board members, any questions? Okay, nice. See none, so we will move on to item B. And that is our budget prioritization process and teams. And Director of Finance will preview the budget prioritization team recruitment process. As discussed at previous meetings, the district is projected to finish the 25-26 school year below its 14% fund balance goal. And we will hear the annual financial forecast at the January 27th regular board meeting. Val?
Thank you. Maybe. All right. So as we discussed briefly in December, we did end the fiscal 24 at about 13.8% fund balance, which is under the board goal of 14, and projecting to end just over 12% at the end of this year. And so again, we've committed to being transparent and proactive in our approach. We are still operating from a position of financial strength. I think that's the message I want everyone to know, that we're able to respond to the current budget, our declining enrollment, and some of the projected unfunded mandates that we're going to be tackling in the next year, but from a position of strength and thoughtfulness as we go through this. So in the memo I provided, I gave a couple of the examples of the challenges that the budget is facing, declining enrollment being the primary. We've seen about a 7% decline since 2019, or about 222 students overall. Again, that's right within what our demographic study projected, 400 students over 10 years. And I think we're about year 4 of that or 5 of that. So pretty on pace from what I can tell to do that. So these last 3 years have also been the lowest enrollment in the past 10. And the things we've talked about, the county birth rates and actually birth rates across the state and nation have just declined. People are choosing to have less children. And then in terms of unfunded mandates, we've talked about several of these. Obviously the special education cross subsidy is a substantial one for the district, coming in about $4.3 million annually. Summer unemployment, while was covered in the summer of 23, 100% with a one-time allocation. What was left of that one-time allocation was completely expended in 24, and we actually only got 90% of our costs covered. So our total summer unemployment this past summer was about 217,000, and so the district had to pick up about 21,000 of that. If the legislature chooses to do something in the spring, we would certainly be grateful for that, but at this point, we are not anticipating much of anything from the state, just with the current dynamics. TRA has been increasing about 0.21%, the employer portion. There's an employee and an employer portion, to make sure that that retirement plan is solvent and able to meet their obligations. And they did that over a 5-year period, knowing that the last year of it would be a more substantial. And so effective July 1, it's actually increasing 0.75% to 9.5%. So that's an 8.6% increase. It's also a percentage of salary. So the 8.6 is on top of our salary percent increase as well. So that will be substantial. In addition, the employees will be also seeing an increase. Theirs is a 0.25% increase. And as we've talked about at length, there are just inflationary pressures that everyone is aware of across the community in pretty much every area of our budget. We had our property insurance renewal, and that was a 30% increase. And again, health insurance and all of the things that we've talked about. So I don't want to sugarcoat it. I just want to be transparent and be proactive and have enough time to work thoughtfully with the district team and community members. So the recommendation at this point was for Dr. Hillman to start soliciting volunteers. We have some meetings scheduled February 11th, 18th, and 25th for basically 5 different budget package groups. We did 3 last time and decided to break that down a little bit more for, I think, some more robust discussions amongst groups, probably targeting 10 to 15 people in a group. And then we will have a community meeting scheduled similar to how we did it last time for March 11th. And then all of those would get compiled and brought to the board and presented on April 15th with the final approval and recommendation on April 28th, which then lines up really well with actually bringing the general fund budget in front of the board. So Again, I don't have a specific dollar amount. I'm bringing the financial forecast to the next meeting. So we're working through that and finalizing all of the things that we know and that we are expecting to come. And we will have a pretty solid picture at that time of both our enrollment and probably a 3-year financial projection. But I wanted to be proactive in making sure we had enough time to solicit enough people to help with that process, because we know that we make better decisions with our diverse community perspectives, and that's where we're at. So I'd welcome any questions about the recommendation and next steps or feedback.
Thank you, Val. And do you want to talk a little bit about how those teams will be assembled, or how families will be, or individuals asked to participate?
Yep, I think I'll let you maybe
Sure.
tackle that
So,
one.
yep, I will, in this week's family update, we will include a Google form that people will be able to complete. They will either be able to sign up themselves, or they can nominate another community member. So sometimes people say, well, I would like to get involved, but I can't be there, but I know a friend who would. Anyone who's nominated, we would also reach out to those folks then individually and say, you were nominated, suggested for this committee, would you like to participate? So we're gonna give people multiple avenues to be able to do that. We'll, of course, use our partners in the local media. We'll use our social media tools as well, the kinds of things that we have been successful with in the past. So that's how we'll recruit. And then again, we will try to include as many people as apply. We have not had a problem of, we haven't had to turn away people for this particular piece in the past. And so I anticipate that we should be able to have a space for everyone. And I do want to make just one brief comment about what Val said. We are proactive stewards of our funds. And so we have a higher fund balance than many schools our size. We are operating from a position of financial strength with a little more than $8 million in reserves that this board has worked very hard to build over the years. And that allows us to respond when we have these projections versus react, right? In a case where someone finds this out and people are surprised, they have to react, which means it's an emotional response. It is an emergency response. We are not reacting, we are responding. And there's a difference between reacting and responding. Responding is thoughtful. It is able to take your time to be inclusive and get lots of different ideas, and to be able to have quality public debate about what are the right pieces moving forward. So this is a challenge. There's no question about it. And at the same time, we are able to thoughtfully respond and not just react. And I think that that's important for the community to know, that we are being very thoughtful about it, rather than saying, oh my goodness, you all knew this was coming, right? We've been saying it for how long? And now we will respond in a way that is befitting our community. So thanks to Val for the work she'll do, and thanks to you all for the work you are going to do.
Thank you so much. Anyone else question or comment? Okay, Ben?
Thanks, Dr. Hammond. Thanks, Val. I think, right, just to kind of echo your comments on stewardship, and it's important, I think, just to remind people that may be listening or coming back and reading the minutes from this meeting, we're talking about funds that fund our operations, right? And so that's separate from obviously the referendum that the community just supported in terms of building the new high school. So those they're two different buckets, and just to sort of dispel confusion as to why we're doing one and then talking about just our budget prioritization on the other hand. Just a couple questions just on the specifics. So remind me, Val, in terms of the unemployment, that's for hourly workers, correct? That's who are eligible for that, or who else would fall in that?
Yep, hourly workers who basically don't work year round. So we have several groups of employees that qualify for that. And we had about, I should look up the number. I'm not going to guess off the top of my head how many people it was, but dollar-wise, it was an 87% increase over the prior year. 23 was the first year, so there's more awareness in those things, but we anticipate
district,
that.
what types of positions would that represent typically?
Yep, educational assistants, nurses, office employees, a handful of community ed. Those are the big ones.
And then just a question on the Teachers Retirement Association contribution. So in reading your memo, it says that those contributions have increased 0.21% annually. So for a total of 2.5% over the last.
So the 2.5% is what the 0.21% increase equates to. So we've had a 2.5% increase every year for 5 years on top of our salary increases. And now this coming July 1, we have an 8.6% increase on top of our salary increases. So
Okay, but
overall, it's about probably 12 to 14% over the 5 years, plus the 8.6.
threefold increase this year compared to past years.
And to be clear, that is statewide, right? That's not just about Northfield, it's all public school districts in the state, including our friends at the charter schools who also pay for that.
Thank you.
Yep. Anyone else comment or question? Okay, thank you, Val.
Thank you.
Okay, item 9 is our future meetings. They are Monday, January 27th, 6 p.m. in this boardroom. Saturday, February 1st, we have a workshop followed by the District Youth Council brunch. That's at 9 to 10:45 and then 11 for the brunch. And then we have February meetings are February 10th and February 24th, both regular meetings in this board. That's all the business that we have for tonight. Thank you to each of you. I look forward to working with you this year. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Okay, moved by Jeff. Is there a second? Second by Maggie. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned.